We're now going to look at the scope of variables. The scope of variables in a program can either be global or local. A global variable can be accessed from anywhere within the program, but a local variable can only be accessed from within the subroutine. So let's have a look at examples of this. So we're going to start with a global variable. So we're going to do x equals 12 and just going to print x. So this is our global variable, which is pretty straightforward. We've created lots of these before, and run our program, and it should print out 12, which it does. We can also create a subroutine that's going to also just print out this variable x. So again, we're now going to run this program, but first I need to call the subroutine, and let's run it. So now printing out 12 twice, once when we print it out on line 6, and then again when we run our subroutine. Okay, so that's a global variable. As I said, we can access it from anywhere within our program because we've defined it globally, and that's when we mean by defining it globally, what we mean is defined it outside all functions, procedures, and outside all subroutines. So what we're going to do now is create a local variable. So we're going to create a local variable within our subroutine. We're going to call it y, and we're going to also print that out. And if we wish to print out y outside of the scope, this is what we'll have. We will have an error because the problem is y has been defined within the scope of our subroutine, and we cannot access it from outside of that scope. So we're trying to access it here. We're trying to access it from outside the scope, which we simply can't do. Okay? So local variables we cannot access from outside of their scope. It's really important to understand that idea. What we can do, if we wish, is we can create global variables within our subroutines if we wish to, and we can do that by using global. And let's say we create a new variable called z, and let's do z equals 4, and then we're able to access them from outside of that subroutine. So if I now do z there and print x, y, z there, we have to be a little bit careful when we try to run this, because what's happened is even though we defined a global variable within our subroutine, we actually have to run the subroutine first to define that variable. If we run the program as it is, there's going to be a problem because we haven't defined that variable yet when we come to print it on line 9. So what we need to do is we need to swap lines 9 and 10 around. That way then, when we run our program, we've defined our global variable, and then it should print properly on line 10. So let's run it to make sure that's the case, and you can see that's what's happened. So to reiterate then, local variables, you can only access them within the scope, within the function or procedure. With global variables, you can access them from anywhere within your program.